its experience and its opportunities for learning from those experiences that we have that help us to enjoy being on our boats all the more.
Welcome to the Passages from the Heart podcast, a podcast made by an everyday sailor for everyday sailors. We talk everything from day sailing to racing to cruising to camping out on your boat and everything in between. It's time now to raise the sails.
Well, ahoy, sailors! Welcome to the Passages from the Heart podcast. I'm your host, Cheel Hart, and today I'll be talking with you about why I bought my Com-Pac 25. I'm going to sort of go through the whole shopping or boat shopping process with you, how I ended up deciding to go ahead with the Com-Pac 25 as opposed to some of the other sailboats that we had been considering. I'll also talk to you about what those other boats were as well and share my impressions about what I learned by visiting them. So firstly, I'm sure I'd imagine at least some of you might be wondering why I'm getting another sailboat after I just purchased a Com-Pac 23 just 2 seasons ago. And before that, I had purchased another Com-Pac 23 before the Com-Pac 23 I have right now. And then before that, I had purchased a Com-Pac Legacy. And the long and the short of it is simply, well, I guess it's always best to start out small, perhaps, and graduate to larger sailing vessels once you gain confidence. But the truth of the matter is, really, it was somewhat that. But when I decided to get back into sailing, I couldn't find a larger boat because of the situation with the COVID inventory. And so I didn't want to wait. And so the boat that was available for me to purchase back then was a brand new Com-Pac Legacy. I really didn't know a whole lot about Com-Pacs at the time, but from what I had learned, what I had read, my research on the Com-Pac Yacht Owners Forum, I felt really confident in my decision to purchase the Com-Pac Legacy. I sailed that boat. I called her Sunflower, aka Sunny, for 2 seasons and really got a good immersion into just basically sort of getting my lake legs back. I won't say sea legs because I don't sail on an ocean. I don't, sail on really any other body of water at this point aside from inland lake water sailing in the Midwest. No rivers or anything like that either, just inland lake sailing. However, as you know, if you've been following along on my blog and my YouTube channel, I have started doing some sailing up on Lake Superior, which we'll get to that a little bit later on. Back to the Legacy, though. I love the Com-Pac Legacy. It was really an amazing little sailing vessel. So easy to rig, so easy to trailer, to maneuver, to sail, the whole 9 yards. But I also will tell you that sailing on the lake that I sailed, which is about a mile wide by 11 miles long, when things could get a bit spicy on the lake, I started sort of wishing for a larger sailboat. Not that the Legacy can't handle it, because if you go on to that Com-Pac Yacht Owners Forum that I mentioned, it's the cpyoa.org, I think, you'll see plenty of Legacy owners that talk about different conditions they've sailed their boats in, and certainly the boats are capable of handling more than you'd maybe think for sort of, I think some people might think of the boat as a dinghy sailor because it's 16 foot 6 inches LOA, but anyway, I will say I was sort of looking to get into a larger boat because I just felt like I could have a bit more stability. Although, again, the Legacy, I think, is very stable for her size. But, I'm a middle-aged sailor. I would say an older middle-aged sailor, and I'm not as nimble as I once was. So navigating on deck can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. And with the Legacy, there's just not a lot of real estate on board up on deck. And so that's sort of one of the many reasons I decided to look for the 23. Now, you might also remember that I had in my first 23, it was 1990. She was called Nomos. She had been heavily modified for coastal cruising by her previous owners, specifically her second owner, I think, Ron Chappell, who wrote for Good Old Boat magazine. She was featured in a couple articles. And so he sailed her up in the waters near Alaska. He trailered her down to the Sea of Cortez. And I think he also sailed her in Colorado. Her next owners sailed her in the Gulf of Mexico, Chesapeake Bay, and also off the coast of Maine. And her first owner, I believe, sailed her on Lake Michigan. So Nomos had quite an extensive sailing resume, if you will. And so I had a lot of confidence in her capability. What I realized when I bought her, though, and brought her to my house to start working on her, is that I didn't really have the confidence to tackle all the projects that needed to be tackled. And that's really what gave me the idea that, you know what, probably best to move her along to a captain who's more experienced, a captain who's more mechanically inclined, because she had a diesel engine and our marina had lost its diesel mechanic. So I was a bit nervous. Who do I turn to if I have problems outside of Nigel Calder's reference book and YouTube videos? So I found a new captain for Nomos, and shortly thereafter found Charm. And Charm is my current Com-Pac 23 from the year 2013, and she's a dream. I love Charm. She's so simple. Unlike Nomos, Charm has very few through hulls to worry about. Something else that you want to make sure you're on top of when you have a boat that has them, obviously. She has an outboard engine. No diesel engine to worry about because there is no mechanic at the lake where I keep my boat. And she was basically like a bigger legacy in my mind. And so she also had more real estate on deck, nice wide side decks to move from the cockpit up to the deck. Although with Charm, I was convinced to go with a roller furler because the gentleman I purchased her from, the late Keith Scott, who was an amazing, wonderful man, he ran the sailboat company out of Richlands, North Carolina for, I believe it was 42 years. Keith convinced me to move forward with the roller furler, and at first I really was not loving it. Using it, it was just something new to get used to, and there is, I think, a little bit of coordination involved with furling and unfurling with the furling line and then the working jib sheet and the lazy jib sheet. So I'm still sort of, to be honest, learning to coordinate all of that. And it's interesting because in the sailing that I did over this summer up in Lake Superior on other boats with furling systems, it seemed almost that their system was easier than mine is on Charm. Not sure why that is, but it did seem to me just, I don't know, not quite as, I don't know, it's not even so much about the strength involved in doing it. It was just more about the coordination, I think, from my experience with Charm. So with Charm, her interior, as you know, most likely, if you know Com-Pac 23s, it does not have standing headroom. And so this season we had our first overnight aboard Charm. And my husband and I both felt after that experience that we were pretty cramped up in the V berth. I think lengthwise, I'm 5'8", he's 5'11". We had plenty of space that way in the V berth, but, you know, from side to side, it was a little bit, you know, kind of cramped, I guess I would say. And I would hit my head on the overhead of the boat, and I would hit my elbow or knee on the ceiling or side of the V berth often in the night. And it's just sort of hard to get comfortable, and probably didn't help that it was a hot evening. We had to close up the companionway because there were so many bugs, and we don't have screens or hatchboard screens for the companionway. So it was, kind of uncomfortable heat wise, I would say. And speaking of bugs, the marina, their pest control company, showed up about 2 a.m. to start spraying, and they use like a leaf blower. It sounded like, at least, to spray the pesticides on the dock to keep, mostly it's spiders I think they're spraying for. But at any rate, the whole night was just kind of a, oh yeah, and I also forgot to tell you, we don't have a head on the boat and didn't have a porta potty. So in the middle of the night, I had to get up and walk up the dock and then walk up to the marina to use the facility, so shall we say. And in the process of walking up the dock, it was pretty dark and I didn't realize it, but there were geese that were apparently sleeping on the sides of the main walkway of the dock, and I didn't see them, but when I walked by, I startled them, and so then they just like woke up and like took off flying, and that scared the you know what out of me. So it was just kind of like not the romanticized sort of overnighting on a sailboat that one might think, and that I recall doing so many times when I was a younger person. So anyway, that really, I would tell you, is the impetus of why I thought, you know what, if we're going to do this overnighting, I definitely feel that I'd appreciate some creature comforts, and I know my husband would too. And I'm just going to say it's really important for me that my husband, or really important to me that my husband loves or enjoys his time on the boat. You know, I want him to be a part of this with me. And if he doesn't enjoy it, he's not going to want to do it. And I don't mean to say that I couldn't do it by myself. I certainly could. But I think, you know, it's wonderful to share the experience. And that's what I really love doing, is being able to share in the experience with him. So having said that, yeah, we thought, let's look for a larger boat. And I was first geared to looking towards bigger Com-Pacs. The 25 was not really on my radar because they're just very rare. I think there were only, oh gosh, I thought somebody just told me only 26 made, or maybe it was 46. I can't remember. And I don't know the years of production either off the top of my head. But I will tell you, they're not plentiful. Let's put it that way. What's funny though, is I actually got an opportunity to see 2 Com-Pac 25s over the summer, and we'll get into that too. But I thought, okay, bigger Com-Pac, let's look at the 27. And I searched for 27s in my area. The only one I could find was, I think, out of Marquette. That was in, I think is that Michigan or Wisconsin? I think it's Michigan. And it was $135,000. So way out of my price range for sure. Beautiful 2014 flag blue hull, all a red boot stripe, all the amenities you'd ever want to have for cruising on the Great Lakes. I mean, it was decked out. It was drop dead gorgeous. No joking. But I don't have that kind of scratch. So yeah, that wasn't going to work out. Then there was another boat. It was a 94 Com-Pac 27. It actually had a trailer. And that boat actually I found on the forum, the Com-Pac forum, which I kind of like, you know, looking at the yacht owners forums for the different makes of boats, because it's nice to buy. Usually you can kind of, you know if somebody knows their boat well. And a lot of people that frequent sites like that tend to, I think, like to nerd out on their boats like I like to nerd out on mine. So although originally I think was listed for sale as being out of Colorado, I think that person kept the boat up in the Anacortes, I think, in Washington State, and I think cruised the San Juan Islands. So that was too far to go. So and it was too bad because like I said, it had a trailer and it looked like it was in great shape. There was another 27 down in Texas, and but it was from the 80s, I think the late 80s, which I'm not opposed to, but I will tell you, the whole insurance thing, my friends, it's tough. It's tough to find insurance for old sailboats. At least for me, it has been. I've tried some of the more marine-oriented insurance companies and not having much luck with them. I'm not really sure why. I don't know, but I think Progressive does tend to be the one people use for older sailboats, from what I hear. So I was a little hesitant to kind of go down that road of getting an older vessel again. So yeah, not too many 27s that I could find. And so I started to consider other types of boats. I mean, everything. I was looking at Pearsons, Catalinas, oh my gosh, Beneteau I was looking at, Jeanneau, and then some even older designs, which I love, like, for example, Carl Ahlberg. He is one of my most favorite yacht designers, as is Robert, aka Bob Perry. And some of the boats, like the Ahlberg 30, I think there was also, there's a 28 version of that, 28-foot version of that boat. I can't remember what it's called. Triton, I think, is for a Pearson. Renegade, I think, is also Pearson. I can't remember. But anyway, beautiful, more traditional looking sloops, which I absolutely love. Going to Bob Perry, I love Bob Perry design. So I think the Baba 30, I think was the Baba 35, I think, and then Toshiba 31. And I actually looked at these larger boats too, because I've always heard this kind of saying that if you're looking for a larger boat, just don't go 10 feet over what you already have. So I kind of mentally made that note of, okay, we've got a 23-foot boat. I can go up to 33. And by this time, we also decided that we were pretty keen on keeping the boat up on Lake Superior. And so for me, if I'm going to get a larger boat that has more systems on board, as Nomos had, for example, the diesel engine, I didn't really want to have a boat like that where I currently sail with Charm, because there really isn't a lot of expertise as far as systems maintenance, etc., for boats that have more on board. It's not also, there's not a lot of sailors where I am, and so there's just not a lot of help with, if there's something with rigging or whatever. And like I said, there's no diesel mechanic. And as much as I love to learn and be a DIYer, I have to also admit that there are things that exceed my skill sets and my knowledge, and I want to be around people who have that knowledge and have those skill sets so that I can learn from them and then be more self-sufficient. As Lynn and Larry Pardey say, the self-sufficient sailor, with the book that they wrote about that. So yeah, I was considering larger sailboats, and much larger than what we have. And the Toshiba 31, the Bob Perry design, funny story, this boat, there was one for sale up in Duluth. I wanted to learn more about the Toshiba 31, so I actually reached out to Bob Perry himself. I sent him an email, and wouldn't you know it, literally 10 minutes after I hit the send button, I got a phone call. And the area code was from the state of Washington. I recognized it because I used to live in the state of Washington for 10 years. And I knew it was him. I picked up the phone, and, it was one of these conversations that you just kind of can't believe is actually happening, I guess. And when I told him that I was interested in this Toshiba 31, hull number 19, basically he told me, well, my advice doesn't come for free. I think I've earned, I can't remember exactly his words verbatim, but he was basically letting me know that he has years of experience and that he's entitled to payment for his advice, which I absolutely said, of course, I agree. I'm more than happy to pay for your time and your advice, your help. So he said to me then, well, I'll tell you what. He said, I don't want any money. He said, just buy me a bottle of whiskey and that'll serve as payment. And I thought, okay. And I said, sure, I can do that. And so that's what I did. I sent him a bottle of whiskey for his help with my questions about the Toshiba 31. We made a total of 4 trips up to Lake Superior this summer. The first trip we made was to specifically look at this Toshiba 31, and we also, I think it was 1987, and then we also looked at a a boat that we used to have. It was a Beneteau First 285 from 1988. So again, these were older, I mean, not as old as some boats I know, older boats, and I was a little bit worried about this whole insurance thing for them because marinas require, liability and all sorts of stuff like that I just was hesitant with the older boats. But the broker we worked with sort of, assured me that he would be able to help me with the insurance as far as finding insurance for boats that were that old, and I felt a bit more confident because of that. The Beneteau, it was identical sister ship to a boat we had. Her name was Starling, and we had her on the Hudson River at West Haverstraw Marina is what it was called, I believe, out of Nyack, New York. And that was about 23 years ago, so it's been a long time. But that connection to the Beneteau, we had that, and so we thought it would be good to take a look at this sister ship. She's a really lovely boat, but she needed a bit more work than I think that we were ready to, to want to do, although her price was really good, which reflects that, yeah, she needs work. The Toshiba 31, when I saw that boat, I thought, oh my gosh, this is the boat. I was like so googly eyed for this boat. And in part, the reason why I am is because I follow some people online that have these double enders and or Robert Perry design boats, that these blue water, long keel or full keel sailing vessels that just, make your mind go all dreamy about, sailing off into the sunset sort of thing. And they're built like tanks, talk about stability. That's really what I wanted, is something that I would feel safe and stable on. And these boats are that. I mean, the bulwarks on that Toshiba 31, it just like the way everything is, it's just like handholds, there's all sorts of, it just feels very safe to navigate on deck and such. So the good news with that boat was there was no teak deck, which to me, that's a plus because that means less maintenance, but there still was a ton of teak, which again, I love, but it does mean a lot more maintenance. The boat also had been sitting on the hard for at least 2 seasons. I'll just cut straight to the chase. I actually didn't make an offer that trip, but we made during the second trip up, we went to look at the boat a second time. And the second trip, it's weird. Like I felt like 180 on the boat. As much as I still love the boat, I started, everything that I saw, I was like, oh, well, that's going to be a lot of work with that. And do we want to deal with this? And just thought, no, this is too much boat for us. We don't need a boat like this. This is, we're not sailing on the ocean, although don't get me wrong, Lake Superior. Anyway, some serious sailing. Let's just put it that way for sure. Boats like that on Lake Superior would be a plus. It would be amazing to have a boat like that. But again, I just felt like, no, this is too much for us. We don't, and there were projects on that boat too. And the price was way more than I felt comfortable spending. But if wishes were horses, I'm thinking that's the boat I'd want to buy, but we looked at some other boats. We looked at, Dufor Gypsy 33. Gypsy used to be made by, I think the company was just called Gypsy maybe, and then Dufor, I guess, bought them out sometime. This boat was from the early 2000s, formerly a charter boat. And it's interesting because, going from a boat like the Toshiba 31, it was manufactured in the Tashing Taiwanese factory, and then going to this Dufor Gypsy, I don't know where those boats are made. I'm not sure if they're manufactured in France or not. I think Dufor is French, but a French manufacturer. But at any rate, completely different the way the boats are designed. The Dufor had a fin keel, a spade rudder. I don't even think she had a skeg. But there's no teak on the boat, really. I mean, none. And the handrails or grab rails were stainless, which I think maintenance-wise is really nice. I don't want to use the word sterile, but it kind of seems that way a little bit because there just wasn't a lot of, I don't know, flavor on deck compared to a boat like the Toshiba. But again, I think that Dufor would be a great boat. Much easier probably to maintain. And she was in pretty good shape, I think, considering I think she was heavily used for chartering on Lake Superior. But she just didn't feel shippy and salty enough to me. There's just something about boats that have that salty and shippy look that I just love. So we didn't move forward with that boat, but we did also look at another shippy boat at the same marina, which was the Baba 35. So after the second trip, I was kind of running out of options for boats, and I was feeling a little kind of panicked about the season coming to a close soon, and I wanted to be able to have a boat to sail on Lake Superior next season. And so that part of me that fell in love with the Toshiba was like, you know what? You should just go for it. Just go for it. What do you have to lose? Just go for it. You can lowball and see what happens. So that is what I did. I made an offer on the Toshiba, and it was a lowball offer. I'm just going to be honest. It was a lowball offer within where I felt comfortable. And I also was factoring in, I think, what work would need to be done in the boat. And I also had been keeping an eye on other Toshibas that had been for sale in the same time frame. So what ended up happening with that is we couldn't come to an agreement on price or terms with the contract. So even though I tried to buy that boat, it really was meant to be that it didn't work out. And that leads me to the Com-Pac 25. Funny story with that too. I actually looked at a Com-Pac 25 the first visit up to Lake Superior when we saw the Beneteau first 285 and the Toshiba 31 the first time. We did look at a third boat that was the Com-Pac 25. It was a 1999, an outboard engine, and I loved the boat. Standing headroom inside, 5 feet 10 inches. So standing headroom for me, just a wee bit short for my husband because he's 5'11", like I said, but he was cool with that. He wasn't hung up on the fact that he couldn't stand fully straight in the boat. So huge for the size. Unbelievable how much room is in this 25-foot boat. I mean, I've been on Catalina 25s before, San Juan 24s, boats. And my boat that I grew up on was 26 feet, a Shipman Accent 26, Swedish-built boat. I could not believe how much bigger this Com-Pac 25 was than all those aforementioned boats in that same size range. It just blew my mind. It felt like much, much larger boat. The only problem with this 25 was that it's weird. So the outboard engine, like on Charm, she has an external fuel tank. And of course, there's a through hole on the stern of the boat that the fuel line passes through to get to the outboard engine. Well, on this Com-Pac 25, of course, there's the same through hole for the fuel line, but the tank is internal. And so there's a deck fill on the aft coaming on the starboard cockpit side. There's a deck fill for the fuel. And so as we were looking in the boat inside, we were, well, how do you, get to the tank? And what we ended up learning is that to access the fuel tank on the Com-Pac 25 for an outboard setup, you just like if it was an inboard or a diesel, you'd go through the companionway to get to the diesel engine. But with this setup for the outboard, you still did that. You still would have to go through, which we did. We took off the companionway steps, pulled them off, and if you look in there, there's the bulkhead that is on the other side of that is where the fuel tank is. So the problem with this boat was that the fuel lines were pretty old and were looking to us in need of replacement. We thought these are going to need to be replaced. So, but to replace them, you would basically, what you would need to do, and I called Com-Pac to talk about this with them. I spoke with Jerry. He's one of the two brothers that owns Com-Pac. Jerry's awesome as well, by the way. And he said, yeah, if you want to do that, you're going to have to take that bulkhead. It's going to have to come down so you can get back there. So I'm like, I'm not down with doing this. I didn't want to deal with that. That's, my husband and I are like, okay, that's a no-go. So sadly, as beautiful as this boat was, as much as we really liked it and we thought it would work for us, that whole outboard arrangement fuel tank situation we didn't want to get into that. I mean, you'd have to be a contortionist to fit in there to deal with that. And maybe 20 years ago I could do it, but I'm just not, I'm not equipped to do that at this point of my life. So we ended up passing on that, but everything comes full circle. So I had sort of exhausted my supply of looking for sailboats through online sources. And just to give you an idea, the sources that I used, sailboatlistings.com, sailingtexas.com, boats.com, boattrader.com, yachtworld.com. Those three, I think, are all owned by the same company, I believe. Craigslist. And there's a newer, I don't know how new, but newer sales site that's called yachter.com. So yacht, the letter R.com. And that one's kind of nice because there's not any pop-ups on it. It's I like it. The only thing I didn't really dig about it is that the sorting is it doesn't work quite as much. You don't have a lot of options for sorting, which is kind of, I sometimes like to sort things by year or by price, but you can't really do any of that with the yachter.com as far as I could tell at the time. Of course, you're all probably wondering, why didn't you look at Facebook Marketplace? Well, that's because I am really not a Facebook user. I don't really do social media. I do YouTube, which I guess is social media, but that's the only real social media that I do. So I've got my website, passagesfromtheheart.wordpress.com, and I've got my YouTube channel of the same name, Passages from the Heart. But yeah, I don't do Facebook. I used to do Facebook, and I had an old deactivated account, and at the urging of one of my Com-Pac online friends who said, you really should just go check out the marketplace on Facebook, I thought, you know what? All right, what do I have to lose? So I reactivated my account and went to the Facebook Marketplace, I guess, for my area. I don't really know how to use this thing. So I type in sailboat for sale, enter or return, whatever, and wouldn't you know it, but within, I don't know, the first 5 or 10 ads, an ad comes up for a Com-Pac 25 for sale in my state. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Where I live in the Midwest, sailing really isn't a thing here, right? So to find a boat like a Com-Pac in my state is pretty phenomenal. I mean, you'll see Catalinas and the more like the Benetos, the more common types of boats. More plentiful, I guess. But yeah, finding a Com-Pac, it doesn't happen very frequently. So I was like, this is a sign. I gotta reach out to this seller. And so I did. Send a message on the little Facebook Messenger thing, whatever it's called. And pretty quickly thereafter, I got a response with, I had asked the seller if we could talk on the phone, which for me is paramount. I'm not really a texter sort of thing, especially when it comes to buying a sailboat. I have questions, and texting that all out is not, that's not going to work for me. So fortunately, he was agreeable to a phone call, and we had a great talk. And turns out he was selling his Com-Pac 25 because he also has a Com-Pac 35. That boat is in Florida, apparently, but also turns out the Com-Pac 25 that was for sale, because it showed where he lived or where the boat was supposed to be, which was maybe an hour and 45 minutes from me. So I'm like, oh, that's going to be really easy to go look at that boat. But then he says to me, oh, no, this boat it's not here. It's actually up on Lake Superior. And I'm like, really? And he said, yeah. And then he said, it's in Bayfield. And I'm like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. We just had been to Bayfield, like, I guess it was 2 times before it was 2 times before we had been to Bayfield. We already did the 2 trips. And then the 3rd trip, we went so that we could see his boat. And that was a 2002 Com-Pac 25. And yeah, I mean, we saw that boat. We went to look at one other boat that I didn't tell you all about yet. And that was another boat that's a blue water boat that I kind of had on that if wishes were horses list. And it was a Pacific Seacraft 31. Ugh, they're just gorgeous boats. Just love them too. So we looked at the Com-Pac and I fell in love, but I'm like, you know what? Just hold your horses. Sorry, I keep saying the word horses, but I do have a horse farm, so my mind is on horses a lot. Let's just, put things on pause here. Go look at this other boat. Just, one more. We'll look at this one other boat. So later that afternoon, we were driving to where the other boat, the Pacific Seacraft, was. And we went to see that boat, and it was gorgeous. But as much as I was totally loving what I saw outside, on deck, in the cockpit, they're awesome, incredible boats. We opened up the hatchboards, and I pushed the sliding hatch back, and all of a sudden I was just wafted of like musty old basement smell came out, and I was like, whoa, okay. So took out the rest of the hatchboard to walk down the companionway steps, and it's really dark in there, and so I couldn't really see well. And I'm going to tell you what, I was in the boat maybe I don't even think I lasted 5 minutes inside the boat because it was so musty in there. It smelled terribly. But what I also noticed in the short time that I spent in the boat, the way that boat is laid out is kind of similar to, it's interesting. It's kind of like, it was from the 80s also. I think it was in 89. But it was right around that time when a lot of sailboat manufacturers stopped putting the bulkhead that separates the V-berth area from the main salon. So in other words, there's no bulkhead there's, I think, little side ones kind of, but not full dividing bulkheads that makes it like into 2, areas, if you will, inside the boat. So it was like an open, like how they say with houses, an open floor plan or whatever. So there, it was like I think a compression post in the middle that the dining table was attached to. And then the V-berth and the settees for the main salon were all, and the galley was all open. But on the sides, up in the V-berth, on the ceilings or the sides of the V-berth, there was just black mold everywhere. That means it's everywhere in this boat. And I didn't want to have to, Lord only knows where you'd have to crawl in that boat to get rid of all of it. And I have terrible allergies to mold. I lived in the Pacific Northwest for 10 years in the convergence zone area. If you're familiar with it, it's just where it rains like 10 months of the year, basically. And you just got mold and mildew issues up the wazoo. So, no good for me. As much as I love the boat, I'm like, nope. Especially for what they wanted for it. I'm like, nope. So, you know what? The Com-Pac 25. Big boat in a little boat, if you will. And the price was a fraction of what these other boats were listed for. It was a newer boat. The Com-Pac, meaning the 2002, newer than these others that I had looked at, which meant insurance would not be an issue. What else can I tell you? The owner had the boat, all the standing rigging replaced last summer. Didn't have to worry about any of that. All these other boats I looked at, original standing rigging from the 80s. And it's interesting because people will tell you, riggers and other sailors will say, okay, it's the 10-year rule. So if the standing rigging is 10 years old, you should replace it. Other people, some brokers have even said to me, oh, no. This is a freshwater boat. Even though it's 40 plus years old, it's freshwater. The standing rigging should be fine. Well, that may be true, but you know what? I really didn't feel comfortable with that. So the whole idea of having brand new standing rigging installed professionally by professional riggers last season, I was like, jumped way to the top of the list. The other reason why it jumped way to the top of the list is I love Com-Pac sailboats. As you know, I want to be a Com-Pac dealer. I plan to be a Com-Pac dealer by right about this time of year right now, last year. Unfortunately, other things have happened that have prevented me from moving forward with those plans, relocation potentiality, the passing of my dear mentor, Keith Scott, earlier this spring, who was going to help me with starting my business. There's other things. I won't get into the details of all that, but it's on hold. So yeah, I love Com-Pacs. I've owned 3 different kinds of Com-Pacs. Well, yes, the Legacy, the Com-Pac 23, and now the Com-Pac 25. And I'm just going to tell you, with the Com-Pac 25 versus the Com-Pac 27, something interesting to me, way back when I had learned the reason why the 25 was discontinued is because evidently it costs basically the same amount of money to make as the 27. That was the word on the street that I heard. I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, I guess, from a company standpoint, yeah, if there's no profit to be made for them, I guess it didn't make sense for them to keep the boat in the lineup. But the boat feels like it's 27 feet. The boat feels to me like some 30-footers I've been on in the past. It is, I don't know. I couldn't be happier. And I just feel that this was just all meant to be. And it worked out really as it was supposed to. So that's why I bought my Com-Pac 25. I'm going to learn so much with all these new systems that will be on board, and I'm going to feel a lot more comfortable doing so because I will be keeping the boat at a place where I have access to help when I need it. And that to me is important because I want to make sure I'm doing things the way they need to be done. That doesn't mean to say that I'm not going to still make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. I just was listening to Matt Rutherford's single-handed sailing podcast earlier this afternoon. He talks about that. Even as long as he's been sailing and all the sailing that he's done, he still makes mistakes. We all do. We're human beings, right? That's just what we do. But it's experience and it's opportunities for learning from those experiences that we have that help us to enjoy being on our boats all the more. And that to me is really what it's all about. The other thing I'll close with is I have plans for this coming season with the boat to have Jerome Rand of Sailing into Oblivion come work with my husband and I, help us sort of learn the ropes with some of these new systems on board. And we're going to do some sailing with him out on Lake Superior, some overnights and anchoring. And the goal is, I think I will say, I have 2. And the time to achieve these goals is malleable, flexible. I'm not going to. I think things happen when they're supposed to, and I believe in working towards goals and not being passive about it. But I also sort of think that destiny has a role in how our life unfolds as well. So the goals are to be able to shorthand sail with my husband, the 2 of us, from the Apostle Islands area up to Isle Royal, which is something I did as a kid, as a teenager, I guess, aboard a Tartan 42. That was an amazing opportunity and experience for me, and really, I think, shaped not see land for the first time sort of experience, and this sort of the wonder that it filled my soul with. Truly, it did. So that's one goal, is I want to be able to do that passage. And then the other is to sail in, I'm a little worried to say it, but I'm going to say it, to sail my boat in the Trans-Superior race. So if you don't know what that is, it's a race across Lake Superior. It starts in Sault Ste. Marie and goes from east to west to Duluth across the entire lake. I've heard that typically speaking, it's close haul most of the way when you're sailing in that direction, predominantly, I believe. Although the wind, as I've learned with the 4 trips I've made, and we've gone sailing every time, 2 or 3 days of each trip we make, we go sailing. And we've learned a lot from the different captains that, captain these boats we've been on. And they talked to us a lot about the way the wind is in Lake Superior, at least around the Apostles and out of Duluth. It can vary. It can be, they may say it comes from this direction in the forecast, and that's not at all the way it happens. And being mindful of how fetch is on the lake based upon which direction the wind will be coming from when you're out on the lake, and using that as gauging what the sea conditions will be like. And I do say sea because Lake Superior is known as the Inland Sea. Next season, Jerome Rand, can't wait. And if you haven't checked him out, definitely look into him, sailingintooblivion.com. He's got a sailing podcast of the same name, Sailing into Oblivion. Jerome, back in 2017 to 2018, circumnavigated solo, nonstop in his West Sail 32. And he's got a whole slew of other passages under his belt as well, aboard his boat and aboard many other boats. A wonderful, wonderful guy, and just incredibly helpful. And he wants to see you succeed, and he wants to see you enjoy your boat to its fullest potential. On that note, my friends, I will sign off. I'll look forward to hopefully hearing from y'all out there in the world of online things. You can find me on my website at passagesfromtheheart.wordpress.com or on my YouTube channel. And I will tell you that I've taken to a new series, a short and sweet series on my YouTube channel. That's videos that are 2 minutes and 30 seconds or less. Most of them, I think, are less. I've only got 3 so far. And check them out. No narration, just some cool tunes with some cool video footage of sailing and boats or sailboats, and something to make you feel all dreamy, like it hopefully will do, but it definitely makes me feel dreamy. That's why I do it. All right, y'all.
I hope you enjoyed this solo cast of why I bought my 2002 Com-Pac 25. If these podcasts speak to you, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, and also stop by for a visit on my website at passagesfromtheheart.wordpress.com. Until next time, fair winds.